What up, y'all? It is Anti-Negative back here again, and we're going to be talking today a little bit about LORWYN and what to expect when kind of like brewing LORWYN, and some of my experiences testing out some of the cards in the early access event for Arena, and just kind of like everything going on there with LORWYN. So for no further ado here, let's just kind of get into it. I played in the early access event, had a lot of fun. It was a cool opportunity to be able to get to do that, and I'm really happy that I was. So yeah, I tested out a ton of different cards. Just to preface, I'm not the biggest tribal kind of typal kind of player, so those types of decks aren't really my cup of tea normally. I do play a bunch of different like creature style decks, whatever, it doesn't matter. I was kind of into lizards during Bloomburrow. I'm not really big into mice, so that's just kind of like my play style. Definitely not like the go wide with rabbits kind of thing. But with this set right now, you're going to see some parallels between these typals. So, you're going to have goblins in red-black, you're going to have merfolk in blue-white, you're going to have KITHKIN in green-white, and then you're going to have the fairies in Dimir. Then you have elementals that kind of like populate a lot of different colors. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of those things there. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the kind of mythics and like what cards are probably pretty good to craft. I'm pretty big on some of these mythics here. I think they're all really, really decent and good. So, yeah, just to name a few. All right, so let's talk about the typals to start out with. Let's start with KITHKIN here. So KITHKIN, kind of all crux around going wide, playing stuff like Kinsbell Aspirant and the not figure of destiny, but figure of fable. That's the new like level up KITHKIN card, and then there's a couple lords, stuff like that. So this deck can really get off the ground running with the Kinsbell Aspirant just becoming like, if you play this on turn 1, turn 2, you play 2 more 1-drops, it can become like a 4/3 for 1. So really decent card in that aspect. And then you're able to play a cool planeswalker like a Johnny. That planeswalker is pretty good. I think it's probably more of a mid-range card, but it can definitely fit in something like KITHKIN, which is kind of interesting because it offers some removal, stuff like that. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for this one. I don't think it's like a must craft. Like I didn't even think that allies were that good, but I did see how they could like snowball super easily. This doesn't really have that ability to do that unless you get the 3-drop Brigid online and then flip her. Once you flip her, you can make a bunch of mana for the amount of KITHKIN you have in the field or creatures. So yeah, you can kind of snowball and start flooding the board out. And then you're going to want stuff like with the elf package. The elf package probably, it's like the elves and the fairies kind of got peppered in stuff. I wouldn't say like there's any like super good block version of these cards or decks in general, which wouldn't make that much sense since it's too many typals in one set. Kind of have to pick a few and build those ones out. But yeah, KITHKIN pretty good, not really like the greatest performing deck in terms of like any deck not being interacted with in early access. I feel like you're gonna have to like take those with a grain of salt, even just testing out those decks. But yeah, this one at least allowed you to build up a ton of power really quickly and then kind of get something going. Then kind of moving on from there, just kind of moving through these, there's a lot to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the MERFOK. MERFOK has the 2-drop Sig, Wonderbrine Shields, and Wisdom, or Wonder, yeah, well, that is the name. But yeah, another flip card, you can give something, kind of like a curiosity trigger, draw a card, etc. for until the end of turn. It can't be blocked itself. It's a pretty decent card. I wouldn't say that this card is like bad, but yeah, it doesn't really need Merfolk synergy to be good. So I would keep an eye out for like a few of these Merfolk cards becoming like more relevant in other shells. Obviously, we have the Deep Root Pilgrimage, I believe that's the name of the enchantment from Ixalan, where you can tap a Merfolk and then it creates a Merfolk. So there's a ton of synergy there with Convoke and stuff in the Merfolk package. And then, you know, you have like Adept Water Shaper, allows you to get indestructible on all your tapped Merfolks. And this could be a card that's just good in white weenies as well, because it doesn't say Merfolk on it. It just kind of does that. And then we have a couple 2-drop Merfolk that are, you know, actually blue-white here that can give, you know, buffs to stuff, and then also buff your attacking creatures, untap a creature for more Convoke. So those are pretty decent. Yeah, kind of the similar downside with KITHKIN is like you're gonna have to like flood your deck with all of this stuff in order to like make these little engines happen, and you're gonna have to find room for interaction and also be able to play around mass removal, sweepers, etc. It's like Adept Water Shaper does deal with, you know, board wipes that ask for destruction, but they will have to play around different like star cages and stuff like that. Anything that exiles kind of like totally nukes this, but overall, like this has like kind of a decent play pattern. In blue-white, usually there's a lot of like tempo flash stuff, and keep in mind we're getting all the shocks as well. So there's really a good balance between all the lands and all these color pies. So we're not going to worry about that kind of stuff with the release of this set here. Really just going to worry about like, can this do something quick enough? Because like if any of these game plans are not winning the game by turn 6 while interacting, getting bigger, etc., it's going to be kind of rough in order to close out games with these. But yeah, Champions of the Shoal, it's another really good card. That's their like 4 mana like champion card, and you can like champion a Merfolk in order to get a big 4/6 that taps a creature, and then whenever it gets tapped, you can tap another creature. So you can tap 2 things in one turn. I played with this card a bit in draft, and it was like really good. You're gonna notice that a lot of these like kind of more block versions of the typal stuff, all that stuff's really good in draft, and it'll be like huge signpost when you are drafting. Like, I wouldn't say like hard commit, pack 1, pick 1, but if you get Champions of the Shoal, pack 1, pick 1, and you see a bunch of Merfolk after that, probably a good idea to go Merfolk. Same thing with the other KITHKIN stuff, like Brigid, any of the like big kind of like commander-ish, I would say, cards, not like for commander, but they're like the commanders of the deck of like the type. Yeah, it's a good signpost that you're probably on the right path there. But yeah, overall, like there's a ton of existing Merfolk in blue already that play the tempo game, also have flash, stuff like that. So those cards were already played in the like the blue-white flash cells as well. So there's a good chance that all that stuff is very playable here. And yeah, we'll see how this one kind of plays out. These 2 decks, the blue-white Merfolk and the green-white KITHKIN, I feel like are just like hard locked to tier 2. There could be a chance that they either get some upgrades later. Though the KITHKIN are kind of like parasitically locked to LORWYN, but Merfolk definitely not. That's kind of more of an open kind of field. But also keep in mind that there's so much universe beyond this year that pretty much anything typal from any of this stuff, you're going to really have to dig deep in order to find stuff from these kind of universe beyond sets that are going to be happening. We're having Ninja Turtles come. There's going to be a bunch of ninjas and stuff. Like, okay, that's cool for Kaido. And then we're going to get like a bunch of superheroes and the random stuff there. And then we're going to get Star Trek. So it's like not sure where the typal support for LORWYN kind of comes into play there. Probably none. But yeah, you never know with Strixhaven or Reality Fracture what's going to happen there. So we'll just kind of like keep it on the back burner. These could get a little bit more support, become a little bit better, but as it is right now, after testing and even like just a heavy evaluation, just like thinking about like, because we didn't test them against all like the tier 1 decks, we just kind of like saw them against, you know, kind of the other block constructed stuff people are trying, and then like for the most part, you know, some Badger Cub decks that people were playing in best of one for some reason. But when it came against any of the Badger Mole Cub decks, like these did not stand a chance. And it was not really close, unfortunately. They just have way more stuff going on way quicker, and these play a lot more fair. So it's going to be a hard sell to get these really good, but they could get there. So let's talk about the next one, because I really want to focus on the three main kind of like blocks of typal. Elves and fairies not included into that because they're kind of peppered in here. And that would be the goblins. So goblins were definitely like kind of pushed into the red black shell. Some Jund stuff for the commander decks as well. Because there's an actual Jund commander deck. And this deck is actually really functional. It has pretty much everything that it kind of needs. It has like another, like, I would say kind of like Bastion of Remembrance with Boggart Mischief. You can like create like a really weird sideways kind of sack deck with the goblins and stuff. And then Champion of the Weird actually felt very good because you were actively interacting with their board. And it's not like the Morcant like elf spell where, you know, you're blighting one. And you can spam elves onto the field in order to like make that really impactful. But Champions of the Weird allowed you to like kind of like sack some of your 1/1s with blighting 2 onto them to blight 2 onto the opponent's board, on top of having like hard removal. So you could have hard removal with like Nameless Inversion, Requiting Hex, and these are all in black. So you can like play those spells, interact with their board, and then blight them after that. So you can like kind of control where that blight's going a little bit easier. Really, really devastating to some of those other decks. And then it also plays red. So it's like, if it needed to interact with the Cub decks post sideboard, you could have sweepers like that. And then Grub, just buying back like a typal spell from your graveyard, is really cool because you could buy back Nameless Inversion multiple times with it. And that's kind of like what I ended up doing in a bunch of games with the Goblin deck, was play Nameless Inversion on 2, remove one of their good things, play Grub out, buy it back, and then anytime I flip Grub back and over, I would buy Nameless Inversion back each time. So it's like, that was really good. Grub's command can also find those types of spells as well. You can mill 5, you can hit, you know, 2 Nameless Inversions and a couple Goblin spells, and those all go into your hand. Like, that could be an effective kill spell plus like a draw 4 to 5 cards. So Grub's command felt extremely good. And then other than that, it's like you have some other like kind of smaller, low power 1-drop and 2-drop cards that didn't seem that bad, although I don't know if they're making the final cut for the deck. But yeah, this deck definitely, like, I would say is a little bit above both the other typals here that we're talking about. And it just kind of like had more functionality to it. It was more aggressive. It wanted to remove stuff. It wasn't afraid to, and it wasn't trying to like play around like a fair game plan, which these other ones really are. So that's another thing with the set, is like there is no +1 counters in the set because that becomes confusing when you have -1 counters. So a lot of this power that you're getting from all these other like typals and stuff is either removing -1 counters, or you have like, you know, Champions of Chukane or Chakal or something, which is the KITHKIN 4-drop with flash. Those are just normal lords with +1 effects on them, just anthem effects, and it's not really going to be like super sticky. So yeah, and we have haste in goblins. We also have Krenko. Like, there's a ton of other existing goblins that these will just kind of slot into a greater deck with those specifically. So, you know, just keep an eye out for goblins. I think that this deck actually has a lot of legs to it. And if not being like very playable, I would say higher end of tier 2. I don't know about tier 1, but yeah, the tier 1 gap right now between everything else and like Cub, Is It, and like a few other like green-white decks It's a large gap. So trying to fit these into there, it's like LORWYN was a little bit powered down, so we're not going to see too much go on there with that. But yeah, now just kind of talking finally about the elementals, and we'll kind of touch base on the elves and the fairies in a second. The elementals definitely felt like the weak one of the bunch, mainly because while these other decks want to flood the board with stuff, goblins, merfolk, KITHKIN, elementals was just kind of like, I want to play a big elemental. I want to ramp into it with Ashling, and then I want to win the game with that somehow. And while it's like getting like Champion of the Path, which is a 7/3 that can deal damage to your opponent based on the power of your elementals, sounds pretty good. It definitely is below the budget of like turns that you're allowed to play in standard, which is a little bit sad to say, but if elementals, being in blue-red can interact with the opponent's boards a little bit more, yeah, sure, but you're having to take turn 2 and 3 off in order to play like Ashling plus a 4-drop. So it's like, if you end up doing that, you really put yourself behind on the board, because a 7/3 is really not good enough right now. Which is weird, but it's not like it has first strike. Also 3 toughness is very killable. Yeah, so like if you're trying to go with that game plan, which they are selling with the typal of the elementals, we're talking about the regular elementals, not the incarnations. The incarnations will slot into a bunch of stuff. We'll talk about that. But yeah, if you're trying to do what they're selling you there with Champion of the Path and like the deck that they want this to be in, Ashling's Command is pretty good value. You can, board wipe them at instant speed, 2 damage, draw 2 cards, create a copy of a token, or create a token copy of a elemental you control. So that could be a huge swing on turn 4. But yeah, if you're using Ashling's mana, you have to do it at sorcery speed. So there's like definite trade-offs with how you're going to have to play this deck. And then Ashling, of course, you can only play 4 drops and greater with her. So it's not like you can like multi-spell with that kind of thing, unless it's like 2 4-drops. But on turn 4, with her flipped over, you only get 6 mana. So you're just kind of pigeonholed into playing like a Torch to Tower plus Ashling's Command. Yeah, and I tried this deck out a fair bit. I really also had mildly high hopes for it when I was looking through spoilers and reviewing the set and stuff. And it really just, even against the typal in the set itself, just in the block format, it did not feel good. So in the greater scheme of standard, if it doesn't feel good in its like, designed form, it's probably not going to be good enough for regular standard. So I would probably hold off on crafting any of these things until like we kind of figure out maybe a different deck for them. Other than that, it's like, Champions of the Path could just be a commander card or maybe a pioneer card at fringe play. I know with Commander, Champions of the Path gets way better because there's a lot more elementals to like play and a lot more time to do that. So when it comes to damage that goes to each opponent, that becomes really good. So yeah, it can be really good there. We're not talking about that, but in standard, this just felt way too slow, way too fair, and way too telegraphed, because you know exactly what you're trying to do. So you just interact with Champions of the Path and you're just like, okay, well, there goes my entire game. So I guess I'll try something else maybe. And it's really not going to happen there either. So I want to err on the side of caution this one. I think this one's by far the worst. And there's other ways to build elementals with Ashling. And you'll probably have to try one of those, but it doesn't require any real like build from LORWYN itself. Ashling itself, though, great card. I see it slotting into a bunch of mid-range stuff, and I tried it in a bunch of mid-range stuff. Thought it was pretty good. Other than that, I'm not playing blue-red. That's just not going to happen. So that's just my take. If you have a different take counter to that, or have some builds that you wanted to try out, have in mind, by all means, go and do it. Find out for yourself. I'd love to be wrong in this one, but unfortunately, not just my opinion, opinions of a lot of people and a lot of experience that people had trying this out. It just wasn't that good. Okay, so now moving on to the kind of lightly peppered in type balls here. We have giants, fairies, and elves. And the elves kind of have like a cool like green black thing going on, which, you know, it's pretty general for elves. Like, I don't know if, you know, just slamming down a bunch of lords and making a bunch of mana will be enough for them unless they're playing Craterhoof, which is very possible that they would. But yeah, you're still playing Badgermole Cub. And my hot take with this is that if you're playing Badgermole Cub to spam out a Craterhoof, why are you using elves? Like you're just kind of doing a worse game plan with this. So there's probably something else there with the like 5-drop elf that kind of like swings the board, you know, pumps something while killing something, self mill, kind of like Insidious Roots-esque type build. The also 1-drop surveil, blight yourself kind of creature. Yeah, there's a ton of different options for elves. So the mono green, go wide, make a bunch of mana, play hoof type elves. Probably better off playing Simic Badger. Other than that, it seems a little odd. They're a little bit fair. And yeah, probably... Well, I know for sure that Morkant is definitely like a commander card. But you can definitely try it out. I also think that there's a Sultai Marlin type build out there that could play Oko, because you could play fairies and elves. If you were ever able to ult Oko, you can like name fairies and then give one of your elves the fairy creature type with Oko's other side. So stealing a bunch of stuff, getting a 4 or 5 flyer, like that all seems kind of good. I also played her in draft and that was really, really good. So there might be a Marlin build that with Sultai, it's just way different. It also plays a combination of fairies and elves, which are kind of the underrepresented types. So it kind of puts them all in one pile. I think that also can be really good. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't believe anybody tested that, but that can be a cool, fun brew to try out pretty soon. That I'll probably do. You can try that as well. I think Marlin gives like Evelyn, you know, the Grixis vampire kind of vibes where you just steal a bunch of cards from your opponent and have fun. So that could be a really fun one. But yeah, green black elves, we're jury's still out in that one. We're not going to write it off just yet, but it's not really looking too hot for them. All right, so now what is actually looking really good though is Dimir Fairies. And you can play like Obira and Talion and a bunch of other things from Wilds of Eldraine with this, and just go all in on Fairy Typal. You have Fairy Fencing, you have Spell Stutter, you have Spell Snare, Requiting Hex. Like there's a ton of like interaction for fairies, and then they're playing their tempo plan pretty heavily. Do I think this replaces Dimir midrange? No. Do I think it's a different Dimir mid-range tempo kind of deck? Yes. So if you really like fairies and this is what you want to try out, yeah, there's a couple new fairies from this set. Bitter Bloom Bearer felt pretty good. I think that card can just slot into regular Dimir mid-range as well and be something you put back in your hand with Kaido. Both decks can play Kaido as well. We'll see how like the testing kind of goes for people who want to play this in challenges. Who knows? Maybe Dimir Fairies will kind of like outperform Dimir midrange at some point, but I think it's just better just to play Bitterboom Bear and kind of move on from there, because a 1 mana 1/1 flash flyer makes a 1/1 exactly what Dimir midrange wants to do. Even if you only get like 2 fairies out of it, it's really not tempo negative at all, and it does exactly what they're trying to do. So having a bunch of fairies on top of that could be really fun. I definitely tested it out and it was okay. But yeah, for the most part, I think that this deck doesn't really need all that type ball, and it has so much interaction and kind of like tempo around it that you can just splash in some of these other like bigger like legendary cards with it, and it's pretty much good from there. But yeah, so that felt really good. I would say this is probably one of the higher rated type balls from the set. And then giants, there's a bunch of random giants kind of floating around. You got Bree with like the white red stuff, and then there's like other vivid giants that do stuff. Yeah, these are just going to be the big haymakers. If there's a 5-color Vivid deck out there, they can splash some of this stuff in there. That would probably be where these giants live, if anywhere. The Green Giant 7/7 Vivid, that felt really good in terms of like big splashy kind of like giant spells. And then there's the other like White Giant that turns everything into a coward. Those cards feel very commandery. But they could see a little bit of play, just because they can be like a one-sided board wipe type thing. Making everything weaker is good, but you know, the only issue with that, them being cowards, etc., is you don't lose the power or the creatures. So like if you're doing it to an Ouroboros deck and then they just top deck another one, yeah, good luck. Also, they maintain their counters, so you do have to like deal with that board. Yeah, so that card feels almost unplayable, but we'll see. There's also one that reanimates stuff. It's 5 mana. It's really rough to play. I could see play in like maybe like a cage deck, something like that. Or maybe Selesnya Landfall, who knows? I don't think so, but cool to think about. But yeah. So yeah, the Giants felt a little bit lighter. There's also Goliath Daydreamer. I definitely want to build more around this card. It felt a little bit sweaty to try building around it because you want to like, you know, play Jeskai Revelation or some other like kind of kill spell brew with like Grixis or something, or Red Black with Spine Rock Tyrant. And felt a little sweaty, so I didn't really want to do that in early access. But yeah, I really like that Goliath because it allows you to just like get way more value than you would normally. And playing it in draft specifically, it was like very oppressive. I was blowing everything up. Yeah, and people really just had to worry about like this giant being on the field, or else they couldn't play the game. So those types of haymakers, Azula's seen a little bit of play right now. It's kind of similar to like what Azula's doing. Doesn't have haste. But yeah, it can 2-for-1 spell, which is really good. Cast a spell, it exiles with the Goliath. When you swing with Goliath, it casts that spell for free. So if you were to play this with Azula and, you know, double spell and then double spell again, it could be really good. So I want to try that stuff out, especially with like Jeskai Revelation. You know, it's very win more, but it could be really fun. So, you know, we'll try it out anyway, even though it's a little bit win more. Anyway, so that's all the typal stuff that I wanted to talk about here. Definitely some stuff to try out. KITHKIN, blue-white merfolk. We got the goblin stuff. Goblins looks like the king of all of them, so we'll probably only put time into, you know, building out that one. It looks like it's going to be pretty cheap to build in paper as well. So we'll keep the jury out on that one. Overall, though, great set. I think... you know, the biggest like things that shine in this set are the cool designs. Obviously, the art is amazing. The collector boxes are selling for a ton of money right now, and they're making a ton of money, even though that they, you know, just kind of like dropped in price after, you know, their initial pre-order values. We're probably going to see them maintain a ton of value for a long time, mainly because they have fractured foiling and, you know, kind of the anime art styles as well for a lot of the more well-known kind of like commander cards and stuff like Bloom Tender or, you know, etc. And yeah, ton of value. Those cards will be valuable. It's one of the reasons why Foundations, it's so expensive right now as well. It's like $520 for that. So I don't see the price of these boxes going below 400. If anything, they'll probably sit around 420 for a while. And then eventually, once other sets come out, it'll probably go back up in price again and probably just sit around 500. That's kind of where I'm seeing it, just with how Foundations has been received. And LORWYN has the ability to pull like really good Shocklands. So that on top of the fracture foiling, like those collector boxes will be worthwhile and worth opening, as they already have been for a lot of people. Even though like there's some inflation with how the prices will initially be received, those fractured foils will go for hundreds of dollars and pay for entire boxes, if not multiple. So those are going to maintain their value. If not, still balloon in price as well. Like that Llanowar from Foundations is so expensive. I don't even remember what price it says right now, but last I checked, it was like 500 to 700 bucks. A Llanowar that was fracture foil. Like, I know I've seen it around 200, 100, and then all the way up to 500, $700 for that one Llanowar. I'm just like, there's no way I'm ever paying that, even though I like it and have the style on Arena, but never getting that one in paper. That's for sure. But yeah, so overall, this set's awesome. I'm pretty bummed that the Ninja Turtle stuff got spoiled as well with the pre-releases, because it's just like, man, this set did not need that type of treatment. So I'm really not even like entertaining those spoilers right now. The leaks, don't really care about them. You know, a lot of content creators want to talk about that, but it's not really on my radar because I'm not going to give it that much effort and time right now. But yeah, let's close this out by talking about just a couple, like, you know, call out mythics, the things that you probably should be looking to craft, if not buy. First one to call out, well, these aren't mythics, but all the Shocklands, if you're keeping an eye on them, you probably should buy them ASAP. If not even buying them pre-order. I don't like buying things pre-order. Obviously, the prices get inflated, ballooned. But there's a huge price drop-off recently, and these Shocklands started around like 15 to 20 bucks, and a lot of them, like Hollow Fountain, Temple Garden, they're kind of like hitting their ground floor right now with like $6 to $7 per copy. Steam Vents and Blood Crypts are around $8 to $9. It might be a good time to buy these before people stop buying the set. Obviously, people will keep buying the set for a while, so you could wait, see what happens. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna hop on these ones. I hopped on the Multiversal Passage like around $4 or $5 on pre-order, and yeah, that doubled in value. So I'm not unhappy about pre-ordering that one because people just didn't really think it was that good. Even though that's like, it's a 5-color pathway. It replaces a basic land. I'm gonna put this in all my decks. I don't care. I might take Starting Town out. You know, if I have nothing to do turn 1, it comes in tapped. Like, it's the worst deck it can do. And so I really love that. Anyways, so Shock's really good. Must buy. And then the other call outs here, we got to talk about all the incarnations as well. These are very, very good. I thought they kind of like vastly outperformed pretty much every other card in the set. Catharsis being the Boros one, making tokens, giving haste. Like, this card is a huge swing, plays super well with Elspeth, obviously. And then, you know, just low the ground kind of creature stuff. Like, Boros does this already very well, so this just kind of amps that game up even more. And is a haymaker. So 6 mana for it. Can be cool for a late game, cool early game, awesome card. Deceit, good bounce spell, good kind of like Thoughtseize card as well. So really, really interesting design. I definitely think this will go in kind of the more mid-rangey type blue-black splash decks, even like Soul Tie Reanimator, stuff like that. But yeah, this very good card. Definitely saw a lot of play. Emptiness, another really good card. Removal spell on the stick, or it can reanimate an Oculus. So Esper Oculus is back on the menu, and this card is definitely like amazing with helping hands with Oculus, and it can also just like, you know, massively like 3-for-1 your opponent if you play this late game. So it's really, really cool card. Emptiness, probably one of the better ones. And then Wistfulness, this is another one. It's just like, this card can go in Simic Ouroboros decks, it can go into Sultai Reanimator decks, and you know, with Reanimator it can blow up Rest in Peace. That's pretty awesome, and it can also draw some cards and discard a card. So this card is definitely going to see a lot of play. You know, blowing up things is cool, but when you exile them, it's even more cool. So, you know, can blow up Soulstone if you really have to. Don't think that's going to be relevant, but who knows? It's just really, really good card. I think this card's awesome. Also, it's a 5 mana 6/5, cheaper than the other ones, and bigger. So you know, drawing cards as well, gets you out of like a really tight spot, also puts something in the graveyard for you. So I think this card is very high on the list. And then finally, Vibrance. This card is really interesting because it can be just straight up Lightning Strike. 3 damage to any target is nothing to be scoffed at. And then it also can like kind of dick you out a hole if you need some life and you need like to find a land to like get something bigger for some reason. But yeah, I don't think you're going to be using this like land search ability too much. Although searching for any land is really good. So we'll see how irrelevant that part is. But being able to blow something up is really interesting in these colors. 5 mana 4/4 can search you for a land, gain 2 life, and also deal 3 to any target on a 5 mana 4/4 body. Huge swing, ton of value on that. And yeah, those are just all really good value, and I think they should definitely be coveted highly in terms of like pack opening, save your mythics for them. I don't know if you need to make 4 of, but you know, that is definitely worth talking about there. And then the final like call outs here, we already talked about Johnny in the KITHKIN deck, but I really think that this card can really show up in mid-range decks just in general, like Boros tokens, mono white token control, even Jeskai Shiko can reanimate this guy, even though a lot of the Jeskai decks are not playing Shiko anymore. If they were, they could reanimate him, and it works pretty well. Removal on a stick makes a dude. I don't know if you want to ult him, but if you did, you probably could do something with that in those types of decks. But yeah, overall, just a really, really good turn 3 play in those decks, especially with the token decks, because tapping out for Caretaker's talent is really just like not good enough anymore. So playing this on 3, removing a guy and making a dude, you know, it's like, that's all really good stuff, especially if you got like Voice of Victory on 2, can kind of block for him. Yeah, just a really good value piece. I think Ajani is very good, and I think we should treat him almost like Emperor, but you know, nowhere close to having Flash and Exile. So not as oppressive as Emperor, but definitely very relevant removal. So we'll keep this one on the radar for stuff. And then Oko, I did not see him get any play whatsoever. I did talk about him possibly seeing play in like a Marlin deck. A lot of people were speculating that he can go into Simic or a Boroid. We'll see about that one. You know, if they're tapping out on turn 2 instead of playing a Badgermole Cub, they play Oko. I'm pretty happy with that. So, you know, that is my personal take. Somebody else could have an opposite take of that, be like, well, that Oko is never going anywhere. And you know what? Maybe I don't care about that. Maybe I don't care if they have an Oko, because he's not really that scary. Making 2/3/3 elks, possibly really good. Milling and buying something back, possibly very good. Overall, though, round trip, you're going to have to spend 4 mana on him over the course of 2 turns. He gives one thing -2. It's not like Tameo where it -1s to all the creatures attacking. It's just not really enough value on 2 with the Llanowar, in my humble opinion. But in the right deck, of course, like Marlin, I think can use that because it utilizes every part of Oko. Other than that, it kind of feels a little weird, you know, because those decks have so much value to deal with on instead of that. You know, like tapping out for Oko is like fine if Simic wants to put that in their sideboard and play it against control or something. And that's where I can. Other than that, a little funky. I think it's definitely a sideboard card for Simic or Borid, but a lot of people want to say that it's a 4 of in main, which is like, whoa, that's a lot of Okos in main where that deck's already solved and already is tier 1. So you're going to have to take out one of their good cards for that. If you want to do that, by all means, do it. And then play me. I want to see how that really goes. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe even I'll try it just to see what happens. But yeah, the last 2 cards I want to talk about here is Bloom Tender. This card is probably the best like low-costed mythic in the set, just in general. Yeah, it was kind of a pain in my tuchus on the ladder on our early access because a lot of people, they weren't really brewing with this card because it was just so obvious that you just put Bloom Tender into like a cub deck that it didn't feel great playing against it in early access because it was very oppressive. You could untap it with Formidable Speaker, make like 10 mana at some point with the that was with the specifically the Vivid Leyline of the Guild Pack kind of decks. And then, you know, with the Bant Cub decks, Simic Cub decks, is like it really didn't matter that they didn't have that many colors. It just kind of made a ton of mana out of nowhere. It's kind of like a cub all in itself because it's always tapping for 2. Having a tap for 3 is even better. So, you know, huge ramp piece, goes straight into any cub deck, and I hate it. So yeah, Bloom Tender probably gonna see a ton of play. And I would be very, very shocked if I didn't in the next tournament all the RCs shoot up in price because it's gonna, you know, be another 4 of Mythic in an already like $600 to $700 deck. Probably makes the Simic Cub deck even more expensive. So it is what it is. We're going to see a ton of this card. And then my personal favorite card of the set is definitely Moonshadow. So 1-drop, 7/7 with Menace that comes in with 6 -1 counters. And this deck or this card can go in so many different decks that I love it. So, and it plays the kind of like game plan that I like playing with creature decks, which is just like a bunch of card draw, a bunch of discard, bunch of surveilling, just a ton of value with it. We already saw that Marauding Mako was very good as well. So this kind of fits the same role. If not fitting into the same deck, you can put Stalactite Stalker into that deck as well, because now we're descending with it. Yeah, just like a ton of value. It also has a keyword now. It's like, if you're going to tell me like Marauding Mako started as a 10/10 with 9 -1 counters, I would say, well, can I make it a 2/2 on turn 2? And if you said yes, then I'm like down. So as long as this card becomes a 1-mana 2/2 on turn 2 with Menace, it's good. It's a good tempo piece. It's a good value piece. If on turn 3 it becomes a 4/4, etc., gets bigger, has Menace still, then it's even better. So you might look at it and say like, okay, well, how can I remove all these counters all at once? And you're probably looking at it wrong. So as long as this card gets 1 counter removed on turn 2, this is good. So, you know, I even had to like check myself when evaluating this card and going through all the steps. You know, like, I hate it, I love it. Okay, I'm going to put this in every deck. I will put this in no decks. I will make my entire next year about brewing this card. And similar to like the way I evaluated Riddler, like first glance, I was like, what do you mean draw 1 card? And then you got to think about it, like, oh, that's a lot of cards it can draw. And it can also be flickered. It's like, once you realize like the depth of like some of these cards and why they're mythics, you'll see that card designers actually do know what they're doing. And this is a valuable mythic, and it's definitely worth its weight. It might be expensive. I hope not, but you know, it's definitely a card that I want 4 of, and I want to brew around, and I think it's awesome. So Moonshadow, definitely 10 out of 10 on my book, maybe 9.5, but I don't think other people are rating it much lower. But it's definitely like, you know, these are some of the cards that'll just be like, you look at the set and like, oh, that's cute, all these little type balls, and you'll see like some definite standouts, and this is definitely one of them, where this warrants an entire deck built around it. And it's not that the deck doesn't function without it, it's that this is like a cool payoff to like an already very, very good game, which is why Marauding Mako, FOMO, and Proft all kind of work together, and why the deck that Proft was in still functions and still tier 1, because it was already a very good deck. These decks just needed like something to make them like absolutely like knock it out of the park. and Profs was one of them. Glad we don't have that anymore, because it would be literally tier 0. But yeah, so that's kind of how I'm evaluating it. Great value piece, good engine. Can even be used in some of like the more graveyard style stuff. You can use Likeness Looter in Esper Oculus, and I saw Ash Lizzle doing this a bit, where Likeness Looter has an X cost where you can like put Moonshadow into the graveyard, pay 1, and it turns into a 7/7 flyer with Menace. So that's pretty good. That is definitely not bad. And because the Moonshadow never enters, so it never gets the counters put onto it. So if you're doing stuff like that with it, also very, very effective. I think Esper Oculus has actually got some wheels. But yeah, so Likeness Looter definitely on the up with that one. But yeah, other than that, I think all these cards are really fun set, really fun brew rounds. There's gonna be a ton of stuff to brew over the next couple months. I might have paralysis, but I'll probably have fun again. Definitely haven't been climbing that much lately, so this will definitely kind of get my gears moving for climbing again. Just been kind of chilling, playing Historic with Jund Pyrogoyphs, or Jund Goyphs, Pyrogoyph, the other 3-drop Goyph. I just love that deck so much. It's really, really... Anyways, so that's going to be the kind of podcast rant talk about LORWYN for this week. I have a bunch of footage from early access I might want to put up. I might want to just hold on to that and just kind of like keep that as like my preliminary brews for when I do launch a couple of these other brews that I wanted to like build out a little bit more, like Meek Attack and stuff like that. But other than that, I think it's a really good set. Definitely worth investing into. Buy all the shocks that you need ASAP before they go up in price. Make sure you keep an eye on them. If they drop to $6 to $7, that's probably good enough, because shocks have not been that cheap in 10 years. So I would keep them on your radar for that. And yeah, I'll catch you guys around. I will see you soon. Be sure to check me out on Twitch. I will be streaming there a lot more in the coming days. So, yep. Thank you for peeping. See you later.